So today I'm covering the Nightrose updated deck profile. Very slight changes. This deck profile will be more of like the tournament experience, my thoughts into the metagame going into BCS Houston. If you want more of an insightful guide on how to play and build Nightrose, check out these recent videos that I made for both pure and crest builds. And also, if you're more of a reader, I made an in-depth blog on it and have been updating it this season as well too. Let's get right into it. So really quickly with the expected metagame going into Houston, I expected Katrina, granblue Mirrors, Shiranui, of course, Mega Colony 2. So those were like really the top decks that I was really going against essentially. Nightrose is in a very good spot where not much has changed at all, at least not yet until we get crest support. If you want to add more crest support stuff, then this past BCS, there was like one card change essentially too. So this deck profile will be like very quickly, and I'll talk about some of the matchups at the end as well. So with the basics, obviously 3G Nightrose, you still needed to do ban the run plays. We also have the 1V Nightrose for bad bounty plays. This came up multiple times. 2 Beatrice as well. This is very reliable for like the Negro Lily plays, and also like writing if you're going second, going into Obadiah, and then also like getting cards out of your soul too, especially against the Mega Colony matchup. Like you can write this on your right face, so you can get a Skull Dragon out, and that way when you bad bounty, you have the Skull Dragon to rewrite again for the following turn. Speaking of Skull Dragon, we played 2 Skull Dragons. I think this is even more imperative now that we still play 2. If not, I've considered playing a 3rd, especially if you're going to play granblue in this metagame and expect Mega Colony. I think that's still a good call, and it'll up the consistency of seeing an extra Skull Dragon sooner rather than later too, but that's totally up to you. But I did want to mention that thought has came to me as well. One Night Storm is still your attack extender. We still rely on it. One Sea Strike and Largoth, this card is really good because you could just get the cards that you need, especially the grade 3 heals. This ensures that you have a disruptive play guaranteed against certain matchups. Also just having the shield quality when you need it. A good example, I did this against like Curtis, who was playing LLK, for example. I actually sculpted my hand to have like a combination of G-guards or heals to be able to G-guard, and also perfect guards. I'll talk more about that matchup, what ended up happening though. But a very good card overall. Still, I highly recommend it. The Forbido, this is even more imperative with the Sea Strike. This helps your Obadiah turns to be solid still. I think it's so necessary compared to having like Bracing Angel Ladder or some other Regalis piece. I think it's just necessary, a necessary evil at this point still. For grade 3 heals, you still want to survive in the early game, and also it's a target for Sea Strike and Largoth. If you start playing like Dewey the Ghosty, for example, you can't grab it anymore. The counter charge and soul charge isn't as necessary, especially since I am playing not only the G Garnache, but also the Water Spout Gens to be able to CC that way too. And also keep in mind that you're able to G-guard in a utility way with Beatrice too, so if you're not necessarily needing a disruptive play, you can revive Beatrice into Grenache and be able to CC 2 to have a net counter charge of 1 for that during your opponent's turn, essentially, too, if that needs to be.
Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. They're great quality products that are anime-based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase.
For Columbar, still really good. It gets you Ghost Ship 9 times out of 10. This also searches for Hanali as certain matchups, especially if you're going second. I did this going against a Gurgit player, for example. I think I did this against the granblue Mare against Justin. I couldn't remember if I searched it immediately or it took a while. But Columbar is there literally when you need it to. 2 Greed Shade. This is where I kind of want to slow down a little bit too. So we've seen a lot of lists that play 1 Greed Shade. Even at one point in the summer, I've considered even removing Greed Shade. But actually, he's still important. But I think he's even more important now with Gridora being around, even more so prominent. I know I was talking to Will from DUELSPEC, and we were going back and forth, and we're like thinking, you know what, maybe the extra Greed Shade would be a good addition. We already have Sea Strike and Largoth, and then having the Greed Shade, that's like 2 cards. Now having Greed Shade is a 3rd card, being able to recycle your grade 3s. So you can actually just rewrite continuously without losing so much hand. It's a very hard matchup, but that doesn't mean that you always lose. So if you're able to at least get a win, that sometimes is the difference getting into top cut as well. Not to mention that since you can't call from the drop, Greed Shade is another card that you can ideally call from your hand. So it's actually probably the next best thing. Because again, we can't normal call Skull Dragons or Ghost Ships. Like those are out of luck essentially. The second Greed Shade also came up in other matchups, just raising the consistency, because I have times where like I needed a Nightrose grade 3 before I rode up to grade 3, and it so happened that it milled that copy on my turn 2, and I just grabbed it immediately. I had another instance where this got me a perfect guard, like the PG Water Spout or Sanctitude against NOK for sure. So I felt like this choice was actually pretty solid too. So it's something that you may want to consider. The only problem with this in the Mega Colony matchup too is that if they're playing that one card that makes you mill card, you are milling 2 cards with Greed Shade. So if they see you getting closer to deck out, especially if you decided to Obadiah some cards out a little bit early on, Their goal might be one of their goals is either they win by just you do nothing, or they win by decking you out too. So that's something to also keep in mind. For the rest of the greats, this is what you expect. Ghost Ship, you need it for draw advantage. Same thing with Cannoneer, but it also has the disruptive play. I did this one or twice in the event. I can't remember why I did it, but it was a certain pattern too. And then the other matchups, they were cognizant of it. Oh, they were cognizant of it. So I had opponents like check my drop zone, for example, too. So it's still necessary. So it doesn't mean that you always use it. I think at one point I did use it on my main phase to be able to draw an extra card. I think I had a G assist or something. So like I was losing a card out and I was like, I can spare the extra CB during this game and be able to get the extra card back. Little niche scenarios. There's Jesse the Ghosty. This didn't really come up this event, but it is there for counter charging. You can remove stuff from your board, especially if you're trying to make the 30 or more for Bartholomew. So Jesse's so important. Once the crest support comes out, and if you decide to play the crest support, you might want to consider King Serpent. And again, you could check out the video I made purely on that, and you'll see why King Serpent could be more favorable than Jesse in that build. And then we also play the one Impix. This is very key. So Impix is not necessarily to give resist to your units during your turn. It's more just to have a body on the field against matchups that can remove stuff. This is also good against Shiranui, for example. If you have this only in your field, Shiranui has a hard time dominating, so they have to go into the Goku, or they have to try to Rin you. And then if they Rin you, if you have like the ticket shields or you have protect markers, you fizzle that card out. So prolongs that, and then it also makes them go into the Goku if they want to enable domination to enable their restanders, such as Furai and Genkai, if they play those, essentially, which most builds do. I realized too, this is also really good against like Narukami or other decks, so Kagero, for example. So just in case, you just need a Negro Lily live, essentially, so that can make it difficult for those decks too. Against my Link Joker Messiah Deleter matchup against Grant, shout out to Grant and his friends too, I damage checked this and I was like, ooh, I kind of need this for later, but I didn't realize how much potent that deck is with like a restanding Vanguard and then a restanding of the given column. The fact that he did not have all the combo pieces kind of saved me, and he had to do a subpar play. I think I would have lost for sure. And the way to stop it is that you need something on the board to Negro Lily, and then of course you can Cannoneer at the right time or Hanali at the right time. Just depends on what they have to. They can play through a Hanali too, but that's a specific matchup too. But yeah, Impix is so important, and I think even more so now is just making sure you have one still. Gear wins haven't changed really. 3 time of the Ghosty for consistency. Then you have 2 Negro Bones. I've considered 1-in-1 ratios too, but I think once we get the crest support, and if we decide to play crest, then I would consider the 1-1 ratio with Negro Bone G. It's nice just to have another card like as a booster to extend another attack regardless of your attacker too. And if you're going to be on the Nightrose name anyway, it just works all the time, essentially. We have Ursula, so important. I have considered Kano, for example, but Kano doesn't necessarily stop everything too. So, and the things that you really care about are like protecting your Nightstorm and also protecting your Skull Dragons from any effects that not only are removable, but also reduce crit. So just having that Ursula there in place helps a lot, especially in the Granblue Mare, so you can guarantee your 4 attacks if you're both on a Hanali lock, for example. Those games are grindy. I actually lost in a double loss against Justin. We went into time, and it is what it is. But Ursula is still key, and I think even in the matchup for Granblue and other matchups that come up, it's still important to keep it. One Hanali, you still need Hanali against the Mare and other high multi-attack deck. The fact that Granblue has the ability to search this on demand is very highly consideration to at least play one. I've considered actually playing a second one and being able to do like double Hanali plays, especially with Owadaya, because you can search for both of them and then just call them to a Rigard circle and boom, double Hanali. You have CB2 now for every, 5th Rigard to Vanguard swing, essentially. So that could really lock out, for sure, multi-attack decks that really rely that. Most decks, if they have a solution to get through the Hanali, it's only one Hanali. So that was the other thinking about going to the second Hanali. Did it come up? No, it did not, but I wanted to share that thought too. Triple Water Spout Jin. A counter charge is super useful. I did it multiple times, and then the 1 Sanctitude, good against guard restriction, and of course 1 card PG. Going into the zeros, a G Grenache for counter charging, super useful. Any starter of your choice. I went to Grenache because I have an SP, and that ghosty situation with Beatrice has never came up in my entire life, so that's up to you if you want to play that. I made the executive decision. If it ever came up in the BCS, it is what it is. Then of course Rampage, the crits. I am looking for 2 more SPs, so if anybody has some, DM me or comments below. You still need the soul. You still appreciate the draw on damage checks, especially early on. This lets you dig into pieces early on potentially, and also just having a healthy size hand while having the crit pressure, which Granblue appreciates crit pressure. Then we have 3 Chat the Ghosty. You want to be able to consistently stride. Again, you're using grade 3s for riding or using as rear guards. In fact, you mill them with like Obadiah, and you got the Forbidogs fetching them out. So just having cards to be able to stride with is super helpful. I am still a fan of 3 Rough Seas Banshees. This card solves a lot of problems that the deck has. Soul can be an issue, especially if you want to be aggressive with your soul and also just being able to not have to worry about it in a game. The fact that if you resolve 1 or 2 of these, you're pretty much good the rest of the game with soul, just by natural ride progression, bad bounty plays, or if you decide to rewrite and go into Bartholomew or something, you know, like all those things, right? And then this lets you freely use Sea Strike and Largoth a lot more freely, while still having access to potentially like double Negro Lily plays with Beatrice, because each time you do a Negro Lily play with Beatrice, you're using a soul as well. So it's just, I just appreciate this card a lot. This is also a card that in the early game, you know, there's the Forest grade 2s, they're 10Ks, and you need to dish a damage. You call this as a booster with your Vanguard, your 9K Columbard, and all of a sudden you're 13, and you're like, huh, I got a hint now. And then next turn, you could just scoop it up into your Bandit Rum or into your Obadiah turns, essentially. So, like, it's very flexible card. Wild Seas, so I wanted to have another card to go into Soul, and I was debating with a 4th Rough Seas, but then I'm like, if you put too many of the Rough Seas, then you might start seeing the shield value issue potentially with it, and also the 5K buff. It's not as bad. 9 times out of 10 it's not an issue, especially once you get to Ghost Ship and also like Skull Dragon numbers. Like an extra 5K difference is usually not an issue, but just having the GB1 crit just for that situation, and also once you're in the stride game, this is something that can go into Soul. That was the other thing too. The difference between Wild Seas and Rough Seas, I can't stress this enough. There are times where you need a Soul in that main phase in that moment, especially late game. So you can shove it into Soul, so you can do like Sea Strike plays, so you can maybe get a VANGUARD out from a prior bad bounty turn, or a Beatrice out, and then revive those cards and build your board accordingly too. And again, if you're using a Beatrice to also build a board instead of a Negrobone, you're using another Soul on top of that. And then of course, if you're on Bartholomew, or even the bad bounty VANGUARD play, you're going to use Beatrice again. So like just having the excess Soul is needed. Also, this card lets you draw up to 1, so you don't have to draw a card. So if you're close to deck out but you need the Soul, this is, hey, I just shove it into Soul and draw 0. But that's another main difference with Wild Seas, because it's mandatory draw. And also you like want to make room for your rearguards too, like especially if you have like a Harley or a Jula, MPix or a Grenache, like it takes up space. So that's why I still like this ratio. Blessed Favor OT, it's still pretty good. It's good in everything situation. Most cases I've considered the purple OT just to be able to heal something and get something out of damage immediately. But you just appreciate the extra crit. Like this deck is like highly, like it's all crits and heals basically at this point. The draw isn't as bad. In fact, most of the time it isn't really an issue. And also with experience, also you can plan for that. And also like you have Negrobone to put cards in the bottom of the deck too. So as long as you practice that, I think it's not an issue either. Rest of the G zone is pretty standard. 1 Harmonics because you need it. 2 Bandit Rum, awesome plays, especially going first. Going second, you do Obadiah. Again, 4 Badal plays with a Logarth, do the 4 attacks, 5 attacks, Nightstorm Beatrice combo. Also set up for Hanales or Julas against the Mare. That's also a reason for the second Obadiah, because you have those grindy mares and sometimes you just go into the second Obadiah. You also don't have to send cards on the second Obadiah. You could just summon full field from the drop and that's it. You don't have to touch your deck, otherwise you'll risk into deck out as well. 3 bad bounty because Mega Colony again. You need that extra bad bounty just to have another turn of like swinging Vanguard again. That could be the difference too. If you have a second bad bounty, it's going to be rough, like absolutely rough. And then of course Bartholomew, so whenever that comes up, you should be able to win on this turn. I don't think, at least with this build, there's no chance for you to get into a second Bartholomew. So the 1 is enough, but like once it goes off, it is really hard for the opponent to deal with this. They have to drop 3 or more cards, and if they're not prepared for it, you can actually win from 3 damage to 6 damage against them. Ideally, you want to do this when they're at 4 or 5. Ideally 5, of course, but depending on the situation, you can just outright win just because of the forced guard that this card demands. And if you have extra CB and Soul, you can do multi-attack with Beatrice and of course Nightstorm in the mix, even more so. You have the GB8. This did not come up in the tournament, but it's free for your call. You could change it for something else, but I don't know, I just keep it just in case. So 2 Negrily, again, this is very good utility card, but also the disruptive play, just to have that. I've considered maybe playing a 3rd one, but it just doesn't come up as often. So I stick with the 2. And kind of just like know how to play around certain matchups with just 2, essentially. 2 Negronora, I've debated also reducing this to 1 to add the 3rd Lily. So that's another option, but sometimes you just don't have the CB and you need a fat shield, and Negronora guarantees that. And it's really the only Soul Blast one that we play because the other one is Oriana, which is also a CB. It just depends on what the resources you want to use. And again, if you have Rough Seas Banshee, like I do, you have excess Salt for Negranora too, on top of that. So at the event, I didn't do so hot, I guess I could say that. I made it to round 6, and at that point I dropped. It was 7 rounds. We had a good number of players. I think I'll see if I can find the screenshot from the app and put it on the screen. BCS Houston was pretty lit that weekend. I'm glad I went too. It was nice weather and nice people, and also just a great time overall. With the event, round 1 I faced Himiko, so typically the first 2 rounds, maybe 3, you may face Rogue, which I expected. Himiko, that player had a rough start, so it wasn't even a fair match to have. And I play Himiko and Genesis in general, so I know what he was going through when he would misroad and all these things. It was just rough. Round 2, things already got heated up. I was facing against Curtis. He's a well-known player from the Vegas area. He also judges events too, but he was playing premium this day. He's known for NOK, essentially. He's top with it too. So he knew what he was doing. I knew what he was doing. So I was going, I went second. So I went the route with denying damage at all. So I did not give him a single damage. I purposely rode and pass. I try to do certain combos. This is the other benefit of having Rough Seas Banshee. I think it was in this game where I searched either Greed Shade or Banshee. I can't remember, but you can like fix and sculpt your hand while you're denying damage. Rough Seas Banshee, if you fetch it, lets you not attack with a ghost ship essentially, but you still get the draw card. So it's not like you didn't miss out entirely an advantage. So that's another way to look at it. I can't remember if I used Greed Shade, but I know I used it later on, but I don't know if that early on. He has a grade 3 heal, and he has enough of the cards to go essentially full combo with the 13 pieces in Soul. I barely survived. Then the next turn, I really went into Obadiah, sculpted my hand, I think. And then I was hoping for the best. And then when I swung, I drove checked 3 Sentinel cards, and I'm like, I don't think I can use any of these beyond the cards that, you know, I just sculpted my hand for. And the thing is, I knew he had Hope on Damp, and I forgot that it was for the entire turn. And I don't know, it just blinked out on me. And I was like, I have a dead hand, essentially. I'm going to probably die unless I get a defensive heal multiple times, because my OT was already out, and I sculpted it into my hand with Greed Shade. So that did not work out. So Curtis got it at that point too. So very good player. He knew what he was doing. It was just very calculated turns that we had. And then it just did not work out for me that the turn prior that I lost, essentially. Round 3 was against Gurgoit. So I play Gurgoit, so I know how the matchup is. If you have a Hanali, essentially, it's very hard for them to even do a bunch of attacks without sacrificing CB. And if they try to do it early on with Campbell, it's almost not worth it. But if they feel like if they're trying to push damage and you're still not getting any triggers and you're like struggling to defend against, maybe they can push it and see the worthiness. You can give them 1 or 2 CB. It's not the end of the world, but you can also give them none. I think I gave him just 1. So he had to decide if he wanted to do the Percival skill or he wanted to get the extra attack in. And of course, Percival is usually the best call to get the extra Excel circle anyway. Just having the Hanali for an extra turn or 2, and then eventually I removed it. And then because I also had like denial stuff, he couldn't get to me. The only thing that I was afraid one turn was if he had Ultima. I don't think I would have been able to survive an Ultima turn at a certain point in the game, but he didn't. He played the LT, if I remember correctly. But he knew what he was doing. He did everything right too. I just know the matchup too, so I already know what to do. And I just won that by playing normal granblue. Round 4 was Messiah, the leader, with Grant. So this was really facing this given build where you can take advantage of restanding the Messiah, essentially, on your turn 4, I believe. And if your opponent doesn't have anything to stop it, it will keep getting power and crit, which is very scary. And then also, we were going back and forth. My impicks went into the damage zone, and he was happy with that. But he did not have another sacrifice Messiah, I believe, to be able to do full combo. And I think it's because he used all his CB. If not, he only had 1 left open. I can't remember the situation, but the point is he couldn't do the full combo because he was 1 CB short, I believe. So then he ended up just doing the Byron, the one that like gets a bunch of crit and takes away your markers, just to make it harder for me to guard against that turn. I was able to have literally the exact amount of guard to stop everything, essentially, and survive. And then the next turn, I just came back normally, like granblue stuff. That's the beauty about granblue, that if you don't have a hand, really, as long as you can stride, you can still have a turn. And I appreciate Grant for even taking the time to explain it too. I think he got his inspiration from Alec as well. I think Alec even plays the deck. I don't know 100% too, but you know, I just wanted to mention that and shout out to them. And also quick shout out to Alec and also Jake, since they topped as well too. I saw them there too. So if Grant got inspiration from them, then awesome. It was a really cool deck actually, just facing it. Like I've heard of the Leader Messiah, but just seeing it like full combo in that way, I was like, that's pretty cool. The last 2 rounds, Darkface Gridora essentially was the next round. This was the champion. So I faced the champion in round 5. And I already know against the Mega Colony matchup, I play against Duke and I also play other players too. So I know this matchup with granblue. There is a chance to win, but it is an uphill battle. I know what I'm dealing with. And I did everything that I think I did correctly in my turns. I think the thing that I would change would be milling less with Obadiah. I think I milled 4 cards with Obadiah just to get some useless stuff out of the deck, but have the increased chances of triggers during damage checks and also drive checks. That could be also a factor in your favor. But also, I think because I had to use Greed Shade once or twice, that caused me to lose 2 or 4 cards more from my deck. And the reason I say that is because it got to the end where like, okay, I have 5 cards left in deck. All I have to do is survive this turn and I can come back. And I think I may be able to push as my final hoorah, essentially. But he relooped the card that lets you, it calls itself from drop and then you Soul Blast a grade 3 or something. Your opponent calls a card from hand and they're forced to draw a card. So he did that 3 or 4 times. I think he did that 4 times essentially, or 3, I can't remember. And pass turn. And so it went back to my turn and I drew my last card. That's it. So he played that really well. So kudos to him. And he won the whole event. And I'm like, great, awesome. I lost to 2 great, phenomenal players. Those are the people that I want to lose to, right? So cool. We took an awesome picture too with a bunch of other people too. I'll put it on the screen too. And then lastly was round 6 was Justin. Was one of the Houston people too. Also shout out to Nico as well. They know each other as well. And so we had a Nightrose mare and we went back and forth. This is the problem with mares sometimes. They just take forever. It's not that we were slow, it's just that it's just a very grindy matchup. And that was my other gripe with Nightrose, is like, I'm in a good place, but then other people also play Nightrose. So now there's mirrors. I don't have a problem with the mirrors, it's just the double loss rule is a factor. I know that going into the next event, I'm not playing granblue, I'm playing something else. But yeah, if we didn't have the double loss rule, I think we would have played that out, and it was pretty close, I think. And then once double loss was issued, well, I'm like, do you want to try to finish and see how it kind of would have worked out? And we kind of sped up things, and then it basically looked like I would finish it on my Bartholomew comeback or something like that. I was able to stop his, he did Bartholomew first and I stopped it essentially, but then I had my own Bartholomew on the crack back and I would have won it at that point too. But I still would have been next too, so it would have been, I don't know. My tiebreakers were good, because both Curtis and the champion got into top cut, obviously. But still, I still had to play another round after that, and hopefully I didn't, and hopefully seal the deal with that one, and then hope for the tiebreakers at that point. So for me, I think I did what I could to my ability. Like, I wasn't disappointed in my performance with Nightrose. It is what it is. I'm grateful that I got to have fun and also play against very top tier players too overall. And I definitely recommend the deck for anybody that is interested in granblue too as well. And again, let me know in the thoughts if you guys have any experiences from BCS that you want to share too. Hope this was very insightful. Again, I try not to go super in detail on how to play the deck and all these combos, just references. Again, if you want to know more than that, these videos right here are really the go-to videos that I recommend for you. Don't forget the blog as well if you're more of a blog reader too. On to the next one, amigos. Bye!